we can come together cohesively.
If anybody can, you guys can. So there's a quote by Maya Angelou. It says, you can't use up creativity. The more you use it, the more you have. I never thought myself was being creative. That's why it's so funny that I'm doing this now, right? Okay. So I just feel many times we don't nurture that creativity. I know for me as an African-American woman, my parents were not, the arts was not something that people were stressing back then. Yes. So I started with baby steps, just like, oh, I want to put a mannequin in the garden. Then I read the book, The Artist's Way, which I love, and it's a way of helping you just find more ways of bringing creativity in your life. And you'll find then you just start opening up and different things that you just start with one thing and then something else opens up. I was just happy doing mannequins. And then I thought, wow, we had all these mannequin heads we got from a cosmetologist school. I'm pointing at the heads up there.
Okay. Right.
At the same time, Macy's had their their annual flower show that they had. Yeah. And they gave us all their old flowers from the flower show. When we picked up the mannequins, they said, hey, take these flowers. And at the time, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with all these flowers? And then I had these mannequin heads. It's like, oh, let's make headdresses for them just for decoration. Okay. But then people started coming in and saying, hey, I want to buy that headdress, but it was glued to the head.
Oh, okay.
So that just got me thinking, well, maybe people really do want to make their own, or maybe we'll make some for people. So sometimes it's just an idea that comes from somebody else. Sometimes it's just a combination of the circumstances. If I didn't already have the heads and then get the flowers, I probably would not have thought about it. Okay. But that's just right when paint and sip was starting to happen. I thought, wow, here's another alternative than paint and sip. You know, it's not messy. You know, paint is messy. And then it's something you can wear. I mean, who doesn't like to wear something on your head sometimes, right? True. And then the Black Joy Parade, just before the last big Black Joy Parade, Walmart hired us to have a booth at the Black Joy Parade so that people could come there and make a simpler headdress. I mean, here the classes are like 2 hours long. You can make a very elaborate headdress. Okay. But the Black Joy Parade is like, you just put something you can get together in 20 minutes. Yeah. But in terms of creativity, I think when you allow yourself to be around creative people, then more creativity starts coming your way. You have to be open to it. Okay. You know, it can be nurtured. Some people are born that way. I'm here to tell you, I was not born that creative, but now I'm always finding, well, what's another way? And then when you're an entrepreneur, you're always trying to be creative, right? That's true. It's like, okay, this ain't making me any money anymore. Right. What do I do? Because the first one I was just renting mannequins. Then I got all of these mannequins. I thought, oh, I'm going to start selling them. Then it's like, oh, let me just not sell them locally. Let me put them on Etsy, because it was before, e-commerce. Let me put it on Etsy and eBay. Then I started selling them out of the country. So it was like, oh, or at least out of the Bay Area. Mannequins are too heavy to ship out of the country. But it's sort of like one step after the other, many times just because of a financial need, right? Same thing, we have this great space here. We thought, oh, let people come in and rent the space if they want to do a video shoot. A lot of times people are doing some fashion shoot or some other kind of shoot, and they want to have a room full of mannequins. Yeah. Well, let them rent the whole place. Sometimes they can just rent just the photo studio. Sometimes they can rent the whole space. Just came out of like, here's a need that I can fulfill.
So it was just kind of organic, kind of.
Very
that's what
organic.
I hear you saying, like as it
very
happened.
Even the dog photography. It was because everybody was adopting a dog during 2020. And I thought people were adopting dogs, and everybody was putting their dogs on Instagram. And after a while, how many pictures can you just see of a dog just sitting there like this? I thought, wow, we got this great prop, or let's make a prop. Let's do a fake cake so the dog can be sitting there, woof woof, beside a cake. So that's kind of from there. And then I have very creative people who work with me, and many times I have an idea and they help me execute the idea. Nice. That's right. The dress from Christmas trees, I was on Pinterest. And I saw those and I thought, wait a minute, we know how to make those. So I had one of my staff members make a tree, and then we created a tutorial to show people how to do it themselves. Then we started doing Zoom classes when Zoom became popular, but we just like doing them because I just kind of like the look of it.
They're really cool.
And everybody just has what they kind of like. Some people, it's like, it's weird, they want a traditional tree, and I like, as you can see, I like things non-traditional. Right. So. And the thing is, there's so many places to get exposure to now, right? You've got to decide what lane works best for you, and then be open when new lanes come up. Like when I first started, believe it or not, there was no Facebook, no Instagram. Hard to believe, right? Right. So when it first came up, it's like, I think Pinterest was up first, really, more than Facebook in terms of for my users. So then it was like, okay, then after a while, you're like, maybe Pinterest is not the place I should start looking at. TikTok. I mean, instead of doing just photographs, I need to start doing video. I think things are always evolving and changing. Sometimes it's overwhelming, I will say, to keep up on everything, because it's hard to be on every platform and do every platform well.
Right.
It's kind of like, okay, what are the maybe 3 platforms that are best for my audience, and let me just be consistent with those versus posting inconsistently, something like that. So the good news is I think it's very possible now for a small business to get exposure that they could not get before to a national audience. But now there's just so much. It's like, how do you get people's attention? Yes, you can get on Facebook or Instagram for little or no money, but how do you still get people to notice you?
Right.
And it changes all the time. Sometimes it was just the type of content. Sometimes it's because you're doing a video content. Sometimes it's because you're working with an influencer who can give you the exposure. There's no one way to do that, put it that way. But at least it's not like the old days where all you had was like to spend money on TV or radio advertising, you know. You can do other things now. And of course everyone talks about going viral and word of mouth, things like that. But it's possible, but I just think now there's so much. Sometimes it's hard to get noticed through all the clutter.
Right, okay. No, I can see that. And then, but I want to go back to the question even on exposure, because what we see as barriers to a lot of Black people, Black businesses thriving, is that oftentimes we're not as exposed kind of mentally.
Okay.
And you're so creative that you were not afraid to go in different directions that you hadn't been in before.
Yeah.
And I think often we isolate ourselves by what we know and stay like in that comfort zone.
And that's why it's so important to talk to other business owners. And I've been in a bazillion different business incubators. Okay. Because sometimes, you don't know what you don't know, for starters, right? And then sometimes even if you know something, well, how do I make that happen? So I think there's no better time to be a Black entrepreneur than now. Ever before, where people are talking about small businesses, they're talking about Black business in particular, and there are a lot more resources you can find online, so you don't have to even go anyplace. Back in the old days, you'd have to go and take a class someplace. Now the fact that you could just be at your home, taking a Zoom class or watching some self-paced tutorials about doing things, I just say you have to just be open to learning. So many times we just want to just do, like, I just wanted to talk about mannequins, right? But I realized, wow, to grow, I have to be more than just about mannequins. I have to be a social media person. I have to get my accounting and bookkeeping together. I had to learn about shipping and packing, because if I wanted to ship them out of the Bay Area, you know, and these are big boxes I need. So I had to become expert at that. So I'm getting further and further away from dealing directly with mannequins and more what's involved in developing a business. Regardless of the product, there are certain business fundamentals that you're going to have to do, and I think that's what sometimes we don't often have exposure to. Because many times people have heard something from, you know, a parent or a neighbor or a relative who ran a business, and you could see some of the things happening. We often didn't have that opportunity.
That's true.
But we're getting it now. And share with each other. You know, sometimes some of my best ideas came from someone who was not in my industry, because there's not that many people in the mannequin industry, Black or white, and I ain't no other Black person. But many times I would hear some ideas from someone and think, oh, you know what? Like the paint and sip. That has nothing to do with mannequins, but it's like people wanting to do something community. They want to do something with their hands. They want to do something that they can take away. Then I thought, ooh, what do I have that can work like that? I wish I could come up with an app. You know, an app is like the new hot thing, right? I don't have an app, but I did come up with our tutorials that people could download for $1.99. That's sort of like something inexpensive. It gets people something that they can download and something that they can, you know, use, and then hopefully it sells one of our products. But more importantly, even if someone doesn't buy a dress form from me, at least they downloaded the tutorial, so they know the name, or they know the concept. You know, so, but I didn't think I was going to get involved in downloads. It's always something. You know? Now I want to move to another facility. At first I did this out of my house, believe it or not. I had mannequins in my backyard, in my basement, in the garage stalls. Finally, I just had so many mannequins that the city was going to cite me because I had so much inventory. Even though I had a business license, I had more inventory than what was allowed to have on the premises. Remember, imagine mannequins in big coffin-sized boxes coming down the driveway, right? So it pushed me to go into a facility, because I was scared. You know, many times we hold our own selves back. I was kind of like, oh, let me just stay here because it's comfortable. But I didn't have a choice. So I first moved into a smaller facility, and then that got to small. Now I'm in this one. Now this one's too small. We're looking to now buy a building.
Excellent.
But baby steps. I always say it's good to have big dreams, but baby steps along the way, right? And part of of wanting to have our own building is, first of all, just generational wealth, right? It's much
Yeah.
better to own if you can,
Right.
even if it's something small, start with that. But also we want to have more space for our different things. And we'd love to have a whole separate area just for, here's our photography.
Okay.
Whether it's dog photography or people photography. After we have our headdress classes, people come over and they take a group photo in our photo studio. We'd like to have a little bit more space so it's not like trying to shove a mannequin around when someone's taking a picture. A whole separate room just for doing the headdress. A whole separate area just for photography, those kind of things. But
Okay.
you know, that wasn't in the cards 6 years ago, but now it is. Now it is.